I Remember by Lorell at Attentive Social Enterprise. Have you ever been in a situation when you're trying to tell someone something like the name of a show you watched, but you can't quite remember it? It's on the tip of your tongue, you've even got the first letter, but for some bizarre reason, you cannot remember what it's called for the life of you. Or maybe you've been in an exam, you revised a formula or a quote a billion times before, but when you're in the exam hall, it's like the invigilators kept all your hours of revision and left them in with your coats and your bags in the other room. Everything you studied just feels to have been erased from your memory and you go blank when it matters the most. We've all been there. Moments when your brain just decides whatever memory you wanted to get a hold of is now a corrupt file and you cannot access it. Until poof, you remembered the name of the show was Stranger Things, the formula was pi r squared, and the quote is this a dagger which I see before me? Well, imagine that, but there is no poof. Not until you go home and you Google it, and imagine all the moments were a lot more regular. Like most of the conversations you ever had, you'll forget a word as simple as tree and somehow manage to describe it as a big broccoli. Well, that was me for a while. Ever since one day when I woke up in a hospital bed with my family surrounding me, confused wondering, why am I here? Am I late for college? And what's that beeping noise? You see, I was always the smart boy in education. Top of the class A-star student whose homework everyone asked to copy. I had high expectations from family, friends, and most of all myself. I was my biggest critic who would always push myself harder. Even when I had done everything, I always found more work to do, more revision, more homework. I wanted to be the best I could, and I settled for no less. Which made it even weirder when I woke up in a hospital bed without a single clue in the world of what was going on. My parents were standing over me telling me what had happened. On my way to sixth form one day, I was involved in a car accident. My airbag was the only airbag that didn't work, and I hit my head against the dashboard. My mum was lucky and escaped with minor injuries only, but I wasn't so lucky. It was a terrible accident for me, and I was sent straight to hospital. After a few days of tests and monitoring, I was put into an induced coma, and when I woke up, the biggest effect on me was my memory. I forgot a lot of things, from what a tree was called to who my own father was. One way I'd put it is that my mind was restored to factory settings for a while. After 5 weeks of tests and treatment in hospital, I was finally allowed to go home. When I got home, I had a weird feeling. I remember my house vaguely, but one thing in my bedroom that caught my eye was a keyboard in the corner. I didn't know why it was there, but something inside me told me that it was special. But I didn't think too long about it, because I was extremely tired. For 2 weeks I didn't touch that keyboard. It just sat there in the corner collecting dust while I mentally prepared to go back to college. I had missed a lot, but I felt ready to go back and get learning again. I was getting the top grades in all my classes before, so it couldn't possibly be that hard. Could it? I went to my first lesson the next week, and as soon as I walked in, everyone was really happy to see me. My friend Liam, who I sat next to in physics, told me that everybody was worried sick, but they were all glad I survived and managed to come back, and I was happy to be back too. For about 5 minutes. That whole lesson I was confused about everything. Before that lesson I thought I was normal again, but after my teacher started talking about gravitational fields or something like that, I felt like I was on another planet. Pun not intended. In that lesson, I was just discreetly copying Liam's notes while praying that the teacher didn't ask me anything, which of course wasn't the case, and when he asked me, I froze for a little longer than I should have without it feeling a little awkward in the room. And all of that for me to just say, I'm not sure. My mind went so blank, I was in a state of wondering if I had ever even learned it before. It was not a good experience at all. My mum knew that I had a tough day at college the second she picked me up. I told her everything, and that's when she first told me about my talent. Whenever you used to have a hard day, you'd always go home and play your piano. You should try it again and see how much you remember. So, when I got back, I did exactly that. I finally tried to play it and somehow I played perfectly as if nothing had ever happened. Songs I wouldn't have even been able to name, I was playing like a professional. It was very weird. My mum was so shocked she called my dad immediately when he was at work to show him. All my feelings from earlier that day went for a moment and I felt happy again. Of course, my happiness disappeared the next day in college. It was a struggle, and my maths and my computer science lessons were exactly the same as physics. I began to struggle a lot in college, from then on. Sometimes I would go completely blank in lessons, sometimes I would try to listen, but the words sounded foreign. This unnerved me. That, along with constantly being asked questions about my scars from people who I didn't even know, feeling like everyone was staring at me, I felt as if I no longer belonged there. I struggled throughout the whole year with these problems, and after every bad day, I came to the same place every single time. My piano. It was my safe place where I always ended up. After I finished my A-level final exam, my mum decided it would be a good celebration to go to my favourite pianist concert in London. Listening to him play on the stage made me decide that that's where I wanted to be. There must have been a reason the piano stuck with me through that accident. I will one day be a pianist playing in front of millions and sharing my music to millions across the globe. I took a gap year the year after my results, which I would spend playing the piano, composing songs repeatedly until I found what I felt was perfect and releasing it on social media. I started to build a small fan base, and my goal was to be a professional pianist, releasing music for the world to hear, just like my favourite pianist whose concert I went to that one day. So this was 10 years ago. 10 years later, and this is where I am, a professional pianist. I'm not exactly a celebrity just yet, but I've had a few gigs in places, and I finally got to a stage where I'm getting enough online streams to be able to quit my job and focus 100% on my music. This is the life I always wanted, and no accident can take this away from me now. No matter what happens, never give up. You can still make it one day. Thank you for watching.